Alright guys, so now that you are masters with solving for x, we are going to do equations when there's two equations and two variables. So let's take a look at number 1. So for each question we're going to do step 1 for both, and then step 2 and so on. So step 1 is to make a new big equation using both small equations. So I'm going to write the first equation down. Alright, and we see that it's equal to y. So instead of putting y, I see there's another y. I'm going to put the other equation. So now instead of having two little equations, I'm going to just have one big equation. Alright, so let's do that again for example number 2. So I have two equations. They're both equal to y. So that means I'm going to forget about the y and I'm going to make them equal. Alright, so step number 1 is done. So now that I have one big equation and I only have x, I'm going to do what we normally did. My letters on one side, my numbers on the other. Okay, so what letters would you put on this side? So I see a negative 4x and a negative 6x, but the 6x was on the other side, so I change. And same thing with my numbers, but 11 was on the other side, so I'm going to change that one. All right, what about for equation 2? Okay, so you should have this. And this. All right, now we simplify. And last step is to divide. Great. So now that I have x for both equations, I'm going to go back to my original. So let's take a look at equation 1, and let's take the original. That was the first one. Now it does not matter which original you pick. Okay, and what do I do with the original? So I'm going to plug in the answer I got for x. So instead of an x, I'm going to change it with parentheses, and I'm going to put the answer we got, which was negative 3. Now everything else is going to stay the same. Now we did this a long time ago back in Unit 3, so you might remember it from there. And I'm going to just go ahead and plug this into my calculator. Negative 4 parentheses negative 3 minus 11. So I get 1. So my y is equal to 1. Let's do that again for example number 2. So again, I take my x, I change it with parentheses, and the answer that I got from this part 2. Everything else looks the same. I plug this into my calculator, and I get an answer. Y equals 7. All right, so now I've solved for both variables, and that was my goal. So how do we write our final answers? Our final answers look like this. So the solution is x equals, and we got x equals negative 3, and y equals 1. The next one was the solution is x equals 0, and y equals 7. So since our equations in the beginning had an x and a y, so we had, for each equation, we had an x and a y, that means our answers also have to have an x and a y. So if you solve that and only get an x, you know you're not done. We need to solve for both x and y. So every answer, when there's two variables, should also have two variables. All right, as always, type in any questions that you may have. I'll see you tomorrow.